Thought I'd jump on, do a quick video about the story that has emerged this morning regarding Arsenal's interest in Christian Nørgaard, which is now intensified, and it's understood that Brentford have now received an initial proposal from Arsenal. Haven't been able to clarify the exact details of the numbers involved, but it's believed that the offer's worth in the region of £8.5 million, potentially £9.4 million. It's 10 or 11 million euros. Sources tight-lipped on the exact figures, as I said, but there is definite interest and there's definitely been discussions between the clubs. Norgaard only signed a 2-year contract extension with Brentford in late March. He was poised to depart the G-Tech as a free agent this summer had he not agreed that extension. It's my understanding that Norgaard had a lot of lucrative offers, both from Europe and other continents, about a free transfer of Bosman. But he wanted to stay in London because his family are very much settled there. Obviously, a big player at Brentford, the captain, a real leader, experienced player now as well, Denmark international. Really been a key cog in Thomas Frank's machine in West London prior to his appointment at Tottenham. There have also been noises that Tottenham could potentially go for Norgaard, but it looks like Arsenal are trying to push through a deal now. It's a little bit of a distance from being done just yet, though, because it's my understanding that Norgaard is currently in Denmark, where his wife is about to give birth to their third child. Obviously, it's been a long season, and a lot of the players are still sort of on their holidays at this moment in time, but Norgaard is back in his homeland of Denmark. So if anyone's kind of hoping that there's going to be an imminent breakthrough and that this deal is going to, be announced in the coming days or whatever, I think we're a little bit of a distance from that. Obviously, even if an agreement is struck, Norgaard's family currently, have the priority in terms of his personal situation. But it does look as though a transfer is very much realistic at this stage. I think Brentford will be reluctant to sell the player, having just negotiated that extension. They've also lost Thomas Frank, and it's well documented that Manchester United are trying to close the deal for Bryan Mbeumo as well. So I think at this moment in time, there's probably a little bit of movement that needs to happen before we see an agreement struck between the parties. At the same time, I don't expect Brentford to command a huge fee for Norgaard, even though he's an important player, because at the end of the day, his value isn't going to increase much more than this, and they probably want to reward the player's loyalty for the fact that he has stayed with the club for so long. You joined them from Fiorentina in 2019, and as I said, he's been such an important player for the club. So I think there'll be a level of respect there between the parties that, this is a real exciting opportunity for Norgaard before he closes his career, to experience what it's like to play for one of Europe's elite. So why are Arsenal looking at Norgaard? I mean, on paper, it might not be the sexiest signing, but my personal information, I would say, is it's more replacement for Jorginho following his move to Flamengo. Now, obviously, Martin Zubimendi is coming in, and the fact that Arsenal are pursuing Norgaard is perhaps the biggest indicator yet that Thomas Partey is probably set to leave the club. Obviously, his contract expires at the end of the month. It's been well documented that those talks haven't gone very well whatsoever in terms of striking an agreement. Partey wants to stay, but I think there's a little bit of disparity between what Arsenal are prepared to offer and what Partey is looking for, Partey and his representatives. So at the moment, it looks like Partey's going to go. But that said, I think Zubimendi is more than likely viewed as the long-term successor for Partey. He'll be the starter at the base of Mikel Arteta's midfield, whereas Norgaard, providing he does sign for the club, would probably be that squad player that can help manage the workload of other players. Obviously, the Champions League, there's 8 group matches now in the revised format, and Arsenal want silverware, so they want to compete on all fronts. And I think players of Jorginho and Norgaard's mould are just as important nowadays as the superstars, because we saw last season Arsenal at times perhaps used a lot of their players more than they needed. I remember Saka starting a game in the Carabao Cup against Bolton, and we know what happened with his hamstring injury at Crystal Palace, and it ruined his season, although he did return come the end of the year, and he was still sharp when he made that return. But I think Arsenal really need to be careful this season in terms of burning out the players, because we've seen so many injuries over the past couple of seasons. Saliba obviously had that, I think it was a back issue that it sort of ended his season prematurely when Arsenal were going for the title several years ago. This season they lost Gabriel. Obviously Kai Havertz had the hamstring injury that he suffered in Dubai. So I think players of Norgaard's importance would be, I think it'd be a fine coup for Arsenal really. And from what I understand, it's an Arteta-driven signing. We've talked a lot about, or certainly I have, about the fact that Arteta likes to sign these sort of big, strong, physical players. They're right through the crux of the team. He likes to have that big spine. Norgaard is very much a destroyer, but he gets through a lot of work in terms of distance covered as well. He's great at intercepting the ball. He's a threat from set pieces. He's comfortable in possession. He can press. He's a leader, having captained Brentford. He's an experienced international player with major tournament experience. So I think, from the outside looking in, I think it would be, a fine signing. But there is also the argument that perhaps Arsenal could have gone for a younger sort of player in the mould of maybe Sambi Lokonga. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that he could have stayed, because it's clear Arsenal were looking to sell him. But there have, of course, been links to Lucian Agur from Sevilla, who Sevilla are set to sign from Inter Milan. Or I believe there's a complicated kind of situation with the ownership of the player. I think Inter might have a sell-on clause. I think he belongs to Sevilla at this moment in time, but at 23, he's a player that could probably grow and learn and develop into a top talent. Lots of experience in La Liga this season with Sevilla, who have really struggled amid financial problems in recent times. But I think that would have been a signing that also would have made sense. But I think Arsenal, I can see why they might look to go down the more experienced route, particularly given how important Jorginho was behind the scenes in terms of being sort of like an on-field manager, because of his understanding of the game, his leadership, his experience. Obviously, he didn't start as many matches as what he was used to when he first arrived at the club, and also when he was at Chelsea, but he was still an important member of the dressing room that was highly respected. And I think Norgaard would carry that same kind of stature and importance. He did actually score against Arsenal in each of Brentford's first 2 Premier League matches against the Gunners in the 21-22 season. Real threat from set pieces, as I mentioned. He's a player that likes to arrive in the box, even though he's more naturally kind of a 6/8. But we've seen with Mikel Moreno as well, the kind of the bonuses of having a player that can attack the ball and be an aerial threat from set pieces and in the box as kind of a box crashing midfielder. So I think there's a lot of nice attributes and edges to Norgaard's game. So I wouldn't get too carried away if I was an Arsenal supporter and there was kind of a level of dissatisfaction at this deal, because I really think that it's a short-term signing if we're going to be brutally honest. And further down the line we can expect Arsenal to look at more expensive and higher profile midfielders. But as I said, I think it would be a smart acquisition. There's a little bit of needle to Norgaard as well. You might remember I was at the game, I think it was April or May, where Brentford played Arsenal at the Emirates, and Norgaard put in a crunching challenge on Martinelli, which he was really upset about. He actually said after the game, Norgaard could have broken my leg. He was kind of fortunate the way that Norgaard flew in. But, obviously you don't like players getting hurt, but you do like players that are not afraid to put their weight about the pitch and really get stuck in. And I think someone like Norgaard is a warrior and a winner. He might not have won major silverware with Brentford, but at the same time, he's if you look at what Brentford achieved in terms of punching above their weight, I think, he's been absolutely central to that and driving the standards in the dressing room. Just a little bit more of Arsenal news as well. Obviously, it's been well documented again, but Kepa set to arrive from Chelsea for a small fee, believed to be about £5 million. He's agreed to be the backup to David Raya, although he's expected to get a share of minutes in cup competitions. That deal's likely to be concluded very soon. Martin Zubimendi, as expected, due to arrive in July. And I do think now, as we kind of get to this back end of June, I think, you know, if you scratch around and look for reasons why Arsenal haven't materialised, or their interest, in Gyökeres or Sesko hasn't quite materialised yet, I think, you know, probably the biggest indicator, without speculating too much, is probably the financial reasons of the fact the football financial year is due to end on June 30th. So I think we could see a lot of other clubs push through deals once that window has finished, because it'll allow clubs to put these signings on their next year in terms of their financial records. Through what I understand, Arsenal are very much compliant with PSR regulations. They're not under any immediate pressure to sell or raise funds, but I think it's, you know, from the outside looking in, maybe that's the way the club wants to operate. Obviously, there probably are a few players they're still paying instalments on, which is common practice. But I do expect the striker search to really ramp up now. And I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's been very tedious, and, you know, there's not been much new information over the course of the past 2-3 weeks. It's been the same sort of stories. But obviously, it's clear Arsenal are going to make a big push for a striker, but we'll see who that is. I just wanted to touch on another story that I've done yesterday. Club Brugge midfielder Ardon Jashari. It looks like AC Milan are pressing to close that deal. They've submitted a second bid, which was reported by Fabrizio Romano. But United have held talks with the players' camp. Jashari was the Jupiler Pro League in Belgium Young Player and Player of the Year last season. Had a fantastic campaign with Bruges. Swiss international, highly rated within the game. Man City were looking at the player prior to signing Tijani Reinders. Obviously, that does make sense because it looks like AC Milan are pushing for him as an option to replace Reinders. But United have held talks with the players' camp. The reason I was on this story was because, from what I understood, West Ham and Fulham were making a big play for him. Although they hadn't submitted bids, they were trying to basically get the player to agree to the move, and they would have prepared to pay fairly big money to sign him. Bruges want in the region of £34 million, which is about €40 million to get him, to offload him, and they're anticipating other European clubs to get involved now. There's been inquiries from the likes of Juventus, Paris Saint-Germain, Borussia Dortmund were looking at Jashari, before they signed Joe Bellingham. And I actually understand that he was a player highly rated within Arsenal during Edu's time at the club when he played for FC Luzern in Switzerland. It's believed that Arsenal have been tracking the player over the course of the past few years, but I think, you know, it's pretty clear they're probably not going to move for him at this stage. I think a lot of clubs from around Europe appreciate him. But at this moment in time, Jashari has struggled to warm to a potential move to Manchester United, although they're yet to make a bid, and it's clear that United need to raise cash to start pursuing other targets strongly. Obviously, it looks like they're going to blow the crux of their budget on Mbeumo after also signing Matheus Cunha. He's kind of a 6/8, Jashari. He is very good in possession, but his defensive stats in terms of ball recoveries and interceptions are not going to be anywhere near as strong as the likes of Casemiro and Manuel Ugarte, because they're slightly different profiles. Jashari's very good technician, good in tight spaces, can move the ball well, good at evading the press, got good close control. He gets about the pitch as well, covers a lot of mileage. So I think, you know, this is probably a target that does point towards an improvement in the talent identification at United. We've seen over the past couple of years, a lot of the signings they've made have been big names that haven't really, you know, kicked on and fulfilled the potential with the price tag. So I think this is a positive sign that United have held talks with Jashari's representatives, although it does look at this stage that a move to AC Milan is very much on the agenda. Club Brugge have got a lot of players at the moment that are of interest to a number of Premier League clubs and European clubs. Maxim de Kuiper as well, he's a left back, very highly rated. Rafael Onyedinka as the central midfielder that scored against Manchester City in the Champions League is among West Ham's top targets. There's also interest from other Premier League clubs. Christos Solis as well, who is the former Norwich City winger, is attracting interest from England and Italy. And Joel Ordóñez as well as the Ecuadorian centre-back. That is on the radar of a number of teams. A lot of clubs have looked at him. Sorry, I think my pronunciation was wrong there. It's Ordóñez. But highly rated centre-back. PSG have looked at him. I believe Arsenal have made scouting checks on him as well as the likes of West Ham. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with him. And then the last player I wanted to touch on was Kota Takai, who is the Kawasaki front-tail centre-back, Japan international that Tottenham is set to sign for $5 million. The news broke a couple of days ago now. It was reported in Japan. But from what I understand, Tottenham beat off interest from a number of European clubs, including Udinese and Gladbach, to sign Takai, who is still playing for Kawasaki at the moment. He actually started a game this morning for them. And the deal's due to be completed in July. He needs to do a medical, but expected to probably be a 5-year contract with a 1-year option, I'm told. And Kawasaki are also expected to get a 10% sell-on clause. Very aggressive, highly rated defender. I actually wrote about him in the Sunday Mirror many months ago now. I do a column called The Scout, which focuses on 2 under-23 players in world football that are showing potential. So I've done a sort of profile piece on him. Aggressive, good in possession, likes to come out with the ball. As Alistair Gold reported on Football.London, it looks as though at the moment Spurs are going to assess him and he would probably be part of the first team squad. He does need to get a visa granted as well at the same time. I know in the past, a couple of other players have had to go on loan after being signed from Japan. Kaoru Mitoma was one of them, but I don't know at this stage, whether he'll get that visa. But the fact Tottenham are planning to have him as part of the pre-season plan suggests there aren't going to be any problems on that front. So I can't confirm at this stage whether the details of the visa would be an issue. So we have to assume at this point that the transfer should be all fine and very highly rated. Obviously, Spurs have got Luka Vuskovic coming in as well this summer. So, you can say what you want about Spurs and, their lack of identity, and they're kind of lost in this transitional phase of knowing exactly what type of club they are, because from the outset it looks like they're a project club with the signings of all these young players, but having won the Europa League, they're a Champions League club now, and they've got a huge stadium. They've got a real chance to kick on and go back to the kind of glory days of being a regular Champions League competitor under Mauricio Pochettino, when they were persistently sort of reaching the knockout stages. Of course, got to the final in 2019. But Spurs are big on talent ID. We saw with Lucas Bergvall, Pat Matassar. There's been loads of young players that the club have signed that they really believe are going to be big stars for the future, and I think that was vindicated this year with Bergvall in particular after they beat off competition from Barcelona to get him. So Takai, really exciting player, physical, strong, good in possession, lots of scouting work done on him. It was a signing that was basically pursued by Johan Langer. So he's a manager that is big on He's a director that's big on data and metrics. So I'd imagine that Spurs have watched him closely for many months before deciding to press the button. But a real exciting signing for Tottenham, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of big name targets that are soon to follow. We've seen the links in the last few days to Eze. We know that they have looked at Semenyo and Mbeumo as well, but I do expect Tottenham to make a big name signing in attack, with the number 6 position also a big priority for Thomas Frank.